Welcome to Conversations With. My name is Shaley Hoogendoorn, and I live with bipolar 2 disorder. Sharing with others is healing, both individually and collectively. Sharing our stories will educate others, bring more understanding, shed more light, and smash more stigma. Our voices need to be heard. Our stories aren't over yet. This is bipolar. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to This is Bipolar. I'm Shaley Hoogendoorn. I'm a mom, a wife, a teacher, an event planner, and a fierce mental health advocate. And I am really excited today because I have Rudy Caseres here, and he is going to tell a story. And I have seen him online, and co-host Julie has done interviews with him and such, but I don't know his whole story. And so I'm really excited. Thank you so much for being here, Rudy. I would love to hear you tell us, who is Rudy?
My pleasure. I'm so used to asking that question on the other side that I sometimes forget, like, oh, I have a story too. I'm someone that
You
can share.
are.
So, hey everyone, my name is Rudy Caseres. I'm an award-winning mental health advocate. I'll never let that go. I was the NAMI California Outstanding Peer of the Year 2017. And
Bravo.
yeah. I'm a live streamer, both doing my own thing, but also for the Mighty, for other organizations. I'm also doing some virtual events with This Is My Brave coming up, so I'm excited about that. I wear many hats. I occasionally write for the Mighty as well. And I think that's it. I once hosted a podcast that didn't go anywhere, so that's awesome.
It's so fun to talk to someone else that speaks so much, and someone that I've that I've watched online. So I'm really glad to meet you, and so excited for our community to hear more of your story. I'd love to kind of start from the very beginning. I'm just wondering, like, at what age did you become aware that maybe there was some mental health issues, or maybe you didn't, maybe you just felt different? I'd love to hear about that.
Well, I've always struggled since the beginning of my life, since I can remember the very early days of my life, probably like 3 or 4, and I've always dealt with depression, anxiety,
Mhm.
bullying, body image issues, self-image issues, self-worth, and so for me, it's just a big mess. My childhood, traumatic, just growing up in the house and all that stuff, moving around, different parental figures, different mentors that would leave me after a while, and just feeling always abandoned and lonely. That I kind of just learned to just only trust myself and just kind of do my own thing and like be inward. And it took me a while to really come out and be outgoing and try to make friends and actually like be a human being. And so theater really helped save that and made me who I am today in a lot of ways. Really, I use those skills for public speaking, for broadcasting, all those other cool things. But really set me off is when I joined the army in 2009 when I
Oh,
was
wow.
21, and I had a mental breakdown amidst of all that. Catatonic, ended up in the psych ward for 7 days. Got out, was discharged. It was honorable discharge, but still, it was.
Mhm.
I saw it as a major failure. I was suicidal for a while, wanted to end it all, and it wasn't until I got involved with a organization called Active Minds at my college that I was going to, that really helped turn my life around. It was there where I actually found out I was bipolar because I had my first real manic episode. In the middle of all of that, I was doing really well. I was president of the club. I was
Mhm.
getting involved in student government. I was getting outdoors more, and but I was manic. I was just a real jerk too.
I hear
And
you.
I had a really good therapist at the time who was also the advisor for the Active Minds Club, and I was really lucky to have her because I've had some really terrible therapists in the past, and she really got me. We clicked from day one. It still took her a while to bring to get me to really start talking about my mental health and really start tackling the issues that I've repressed for so long.
Yeah.
But I did, and I got through that, and I had a couple other psych hospital stays as well, and breakdowns and catatonic
Hmm.
episodes.
Yeah.
But I started getting involved in public speaking, and that was fun. And started traveling in the country and sharing my story, and then doing live streaming and all kinds of other fun stuff. So it's been a wild ride throughout
Yes.
my entire life. I feel like things are starting to kind of level out. I'm getting older, and I can just kind of just be content with myself. I'm married now, got a dog, and living pretty well now, and I don't have to worry too much about like my life completely crumbling anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like you have an amazing support system. I'd love to go back just for we have a lot of listeners like us that have live with bipolar disorder as well, but also we have a lot of listeners that are trying to understand maybe a loved one or maybe just trying to understand the people around them. And so I would just love to hear, would you be willing to talk a little bit more about what that maybe the starting the army, what that breakdown kind of looked like from the outside, what it looked like, and maybe also like what you were actually feeling. A lot of people also don't really understand catatonia, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, like the army lifestyle was never meant for me, but I could not find work. I tried finding work as an actor, just tried
Mm.
working at a Radio Shack, all kinds of other stuff, and I knew I needed to do something major in my
Mm.
life, or I was just gonna keep sliding downhill. And for me, the army was like instant getaway. I can go from just like laying around all day at my family's and not making anything for myself
Mm.
to being like a superhero. And so I joined basic training, went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. It was very tough, mentally, physically, just I felt like a failure every day, whether it's working the radio to throwing grenades, shooting the rifles, rappelling. It was just it was a lot, and I got bullied there too. I had a couple of friends, and that helped me get through. And one of the things that also helped me get through was that I was going into military intelligence. So after I graduated basic training, I went to military intelligence school, and my drill sergeant, he told me, like, because I was having a real hard time, I almost quit. He said, like, once you get to military intelligence, you'll do better. This isn't the real army, basic training, and
Mm.
just don't look back. And I believed him because it was more of an academic setting, and
Mm.
I would do better in that. And I didn't.
Mm.
It started off like easy enough, but it just kept getting harder and harder, and kept getting overwhelming. And I was actually I was seeing someone at the time back home, and I finally got to see her for 4th of July weekend, and that was great. And then the week after that, like things really started to slide downhill, and it got to the point where I was just like about to have a mental breakdown. I was just trying to
Mm.
talk to anyone, even the chaplain, and I wasn't able to see him in time before I had my first catatonic episode. I remember after a day of training, I went into the dining facility for dinner,
Mm.
and I found the first person that I could talk to and told them that I don't want to be here anymore, that I want to kill
Mm.
myself.
Yeah.
And then I went catatonic, completely froze, and they had to carry me out, put me on a stretcher, and take me to the emergency room. And I finally was able to break out of it. Some people, they stay in catatonic episodes for days or weeks, and they have to
Yeah.
be force fed and be monitored, or else they just like choke on their own saliva. And it's a
Wow.
really terrible experience because you can hear everything around you, at least I could, and see everything. But,
Mm.
and I want to move, I want to talk,
Yeah.
I don't want to end up in the hospital, and I can't, just frozen. And it's one of those things where most people, they have a fight or flight response to things that are very stressful or dangerous. And
Mm.
I couldn't flee the army. I would have been
Right.
AWOL, um and I couldn't fight anymore, so I froze.
Wow. Wow. That's so like fascinating and terrible. I'm sorry that happened. Um, how was it like in what was the stigma like in the army? Because how long ago was that?
This was back in 2009. I was
Yeah.
21, and yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of homophobia. This was still
Mm,
don't ask, don't tell.
mm,
So, I mean, not that I'm gay, but like just like male weakness, you're just
yeah.
considered gay. And anything that like if you're having struggling with mental health, you're still weak and getting made
Mm,
fun of by everyone. And so it was very
mhm.
bad. And I also knew that if I was diagnosed with a mental illness in the army, that would be the end. And I
Oh,
didn't want that
wow.
to happen. And I did. I was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia because of the catatonic episodes. It wasn't until 2015 where I finally got the diagnosis of bipolar.
Wow. Yeah. So do you think before, like before you were talking about like going towards a mental breakdown, do you think, or do doctors think, do they think it was a manic episode or a depressive episode, or was it mixed? Do you ever think about that or analyze that?
Yeah, well, I wasn't seeing a doctor at the time where I was
Mm.
manic. And so it wasn't until I already had the crash
Mm.
where I came crawling back to my psychiatrist. And she actually didn't believe me at first because she didn't see that part of me.
Right.
So, I mean, that's common with a lot of people who are bipolar. We don't take our meds. We don't see the doctor. We think we have superpowers. I thought I was cured because I never felt better in my life. I felt like I finally broke free from that stranglehold that depression had on me. I could
Yeah.
finally live life on my own terms. I'm confident. I'm not going to take anything from anyone, and I'm going to like make sure that I'm get the respect that I deserve.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful what you're saying, because it is a lot of people I find there's like, oh, why would someone go off their meds? It's like, you don't understand how good we feel, right? Our brain is telling us we can do no wrong, or every time that I have bipolar too, so I experience hypomania, and every time I start to think, oh, that was the last depressive episode. And I know because I've written myself notes and I have a support team and such that not to go off my meds, but I can completely relate to people that either do or are tempted to do. And I really hope that people understand that, and it's not just we're flippant like, oh, here and there. It really does feel like you're amazing. um so after, and that makes me really sad too, that you get kicked out, right? So there's people probably really, really suffering in the army, even though they have a lot to offer, that won't go for help. I know I've talked to someone before that was a trucker, and his life is like not okay, but he won't get help because he's afraid they'll take away his license. And I'm like, no, fight that stigma. So I think it's really amazing that you went for help. Unfortunately, you had to go, get into that state, but wow. So after that, you had your discharge. Did you say that's when you were in school?
It was a lot of wandering through the wild for quite for quite
Okay,
some time.
okay. Yeah.
Like I actually wanted to go back into the army
Yeah.
and kind of redeem myself. I was just trying to still stay in shape. I was, of course, in the best shape of my life. And I was
Yeah.
just wanted to like not get into that funk again.
Mm,
And day by day, week by week, I just slowly crept back into that.
yeah.
And it was very hard to get out of it. I tried doing acting again. It was unreliable, dropping out of plays.
Yeah.
I actually had a catatonic episode during a rehearsal once and had to
Oh,
be stretchered out in front of all my castmates.
oh,
And I was trying to go to school and failing all my classes. It wasn't until 2014 where I just had to leave class one day and go to the counseling center and say like I need to talk to a therapist. And thankfully,
yeah.
I was able to talk to that therapist that I talked about earlier that same day,
Wow.
and I was able to see her every week, which is amazing. I couldn't
Yeah.
find that anywhere else for free, too.
Yeah.
So it took a long time,
Yeah.
and I wish I had found that sooner. But once I did, it was up, up, up from there with
Oh,
setbacks high here and there, of course.
yeah. Yeah. I hope people that are hearing that feel encouraged to go and get help, even though it's really scary. And yeah, it's just so taking that first step just makes such a difference. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking about, the stories that our brains tell us. And I think that you touched on some powerful ones, that it's really hard to separate what is your illness and then feeling like a personal failure. I can relate when you said that. I was like, oh, I feel that when I haven't followed through on things, or sometimes I'm not even sure how I got through my degree. Like, it took longer, but it was really, really, really difficult. So thank you for sharing that. So when you had your first episode, a catatonic episode, so you said you were diagnosed with schizophrenia. So then did you get treatment for that?
I got medication from it, but
Right.
it wasn't very helpful
Yeah.
because I didn't want to open up too much in the army. And once I got out, it actually took me a while to start seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist. So I wasn't on any meds for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and by then, like I wasn't having catatonic episodes anymore. So
Mhm.
I was just trying to figure things out. And so, um, I mean, I don't. I mean, if someone wants to label that for certain reasons, then fine. Like even now with bipolar, because I haven't had a manic episode since 2016, I
Mm.
sometimes wonder about that. Was that just a phase of my life? And it certainly can be for some people. I know people who have had the bipolar diagnosis for years and years and
Mm.
years, and then they get into their 40s or in 50s, and it's like I don't even know if that was a real thing. And I'm not saying that that's me, but it makes me wonder because we use these labels and sometimes they can be very helpful and we can
Mm.
find community. I can find you, but
Yeah.
I try not to not let that truly define me. I have no problem saying I'm bipolar. It's a part of me. I'm not
Hmm.
ashamed of it. I don't run away from it. It is part of me, but it's not all of me.
Yes. Oh, amen. I'm like cheering. Yes. Yeah, it isn't. And what you said is so true. For people that have just got diagnosed, it's really, really hard, but it's also not all of you. And I don't know if you agree, but I felt like when I could separate it from me, like this is an illness and I have it, but it is not me. I was able to, start be more open to a healing journey and getting the help, because I just thought like it was a character flaw before. And I feel you too, because sometimes I feel like a little bit of an imposter, because luckily my meds have worked so well. I used to experience like a depression every year, like half the year. It was like mine was clockwork. And I haven't had a major depression in 12 years. So then I start to think like, am I really? Or those kind of things. But yeah, my meds saved my life. So I'm sticking to it right now. But it does it does feel weird, because a lot of what's shown on TV or other things just shows us up, 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 or down, down all the time. And there are lots of times where we're stable and just living like everybody else. Yeah. So then, did your therapist that you love, that helped you in school, did you say it was she? It was a woman?
Yes.
Yeah. Did she then diagnose you with bipolar disorder?
No, she was actually an intern getting her PsyD, so she'd not diagnosed me, but my psychiatrist did. I was getting healthcare through Los Angeles County actually at the time, and because I wasn't I didn't get approved for my V disability until late 2015, which was
Mhm.
a blessing. I went from being a complete mess, almost ending up homeless, to like actually because I got my all my back pay, like I was able to buy a new car and live on my own for the first time. So
Wow.
that was a godsend.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's really hard. I live in Canada, so I don't fully understand the system in the US. I know here it's free, which seems totally awesome, except for you can be borderline suicidal, and it's like, oh, you can have an appointment in 5 months. So there's that hurdle, but I know in the States the expenses are astronomical. Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't explain healthcare in America if I tried.
Yeah, right. It's so wild. There's so many gaps. It's really really frustrating. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talk about, because I know there are some people that desperately need to go to the hospital or the psych ward, and I know there's both terrible experiences and then it has saved people's lives. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talk about your experiences or what you remember from that.
Yeah, well, I was definitely in the horrible experiences camp,
Shucks.
um,
Oh.
because it was against my will. I mean,
Mm,
I was put in restraints. I even had a
mm,
catheter put in me, and it was a very traumatic experience. And I didn't get help there. The only way I was able to get out was by being the good patient and going to the group therapy and sharing. And I was only able to talk one on one with a psychiatrist, with a therapist, like once for just like 10
really?
minutes. It
Yeah.
was not helpful at all. And sadly, that is the case for a lot of people. And we hear we hear about the good experiences, but then we don't always take the bad experiences as seriously,
Mm,
because
yeah.
we want to say it's important to get help and that hospitals are good and psychiatry is
Yeah.
good, but it definitely does do a lot of harm. Definitely
Yeah.
does a lot of traumatic experiences, and it can make things worse. Like people actually end up even more suicidal after a psych ward stay, and it's it's a broken system. And
Yes.
could there be a better system? Of course, but it
Mm,
needs to be centered more about personal decision making. I know some people are going to be like, oh, what if the person doesn't even know if they're sick? The person at least knows that there's something different.
right.
And oftentimes we get scared by people who are in these states, and we just hand them off to the police or to the psych wards,
Yeah.
and we don't try to sit down with them. We don't try to ask them, like, what do you actually need?
Mm,
What is the traumatizing thing behind this? What happened, as opposed to what's wrong, or like, I'm just going to like call the police because you're acting
yeah.
erratic. There's not enough decision making by the person.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it could be as simple as, do you want to sit down, or do you want me to sit down with you, or do you want to stand up? Just simple things like that, where a person feels like someone is actually trying to
Yeah.
see them and help them, and have them give them some kind of personal agency instead of just wanting to lock them up.
Yeah, yeah. It's really really terrible that sometimes yeah, that reaching out would be just as scary as what you're experiencing because you don't know. And you're right, like with the police, if there's not trauma informed care or if there's not like courses on mental health, of course you get treated, according to stigma as dangerous, as violent. And I mean, of course there are situations like that, but generally most of us are not, we're just struggling. We're not like that. And I love what you said there. It's see the human first, right?
Right.
And I think that saves lives, right? And I know that with it being suicide prevention month, a lot of people are like, well, what can we do? What can we do? What's the magic thing to say? And like you just said, sitting with someone, talking to them, and even if they don't know what they want, asking will help think, and making it simple. I love that you said that. Do you want to sit down? Do you want to, simple things. Can I get you water? Right? Because sometimes when you're in that state, you don't know what you need. You're just your body and your mind, you're just trying to protect yourself from all of the feelings. That's really powerful. Thank you. I'm curious about all the questions that we get on our Instagram, and when people write in is a lot about, everybody wants to know about relationship. And I'm wondering, what would you say your relationships looked like pre-diagnosis? And then I'd love to hear, like, once you were on a treatment plan, how that changed relationships. That's a big question, I know. Maybe pick maybe a story, or if you struggled with what you struggled with relationships before, and if it got easier. I know a lot of people are curious about that.
Yeah, it definitely got more strained with my family. I didn't want to talk about my diagnosis or my mental health at all for the longest time with my family. And now I'm estranged from my family after I moved out. Like I never looked back.
Yeah.
Um, and the definitely friendships were strained because they didn't understand,
Mm,
and I was just a mess to begin with. I mean, part of it's me. It's not just the people in my life that left me.
yeah.
Um, Romantic relationships were non-existent,
Mm,
and I just got tired of just hiding and bottling all this up. And once I started sharing, I found communities online, started going to conferences and all kinds of different things, and started sharing my own story. And then other people started opening up to me. And so I built my own family. I built my own community, and I'm proud of that. I really like appreciate all the people that I've come across, even if I've never even met them in person. And
yeah.
so even though things were strained with my previous relationships,
Hmm.
because I was more open about my mental health, I opened myself up to all these new relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Chosen family, right? And it's a powerful thing. A lot of people say, oh, internet, social media. And yes, of course, there's damaging things about it. But I have felt the most community and the most being able to show up as my full self in a lot of those spaces. And yeah, deeper relationships, right? Yes, I had relationships when you keep quiet because you be kind of what you think you're supposed to be, but just that deep relationship when someone can say me too, and sharing opens it up. I couldn't believe how many other people struggled. Like I thought I was like the only bipolar person I would ever meet when I first found out. But there are a lot of us and we are awesome. Find us online.
Agreed.
Yes, I'll put all of Rudy's information and find us and find these spaces. And what I love about the internet and online things for a while, because sometimes it's really hard to be vulnerable in a space when you also show up. Sometimes it's kind of like a starter, to reach out through a message and such. And yeah, that's really great. And you said that a lot of people tell me in the beginning of their diagnosis, like, is my life over? Will I have a life? That kind of thing. And I know I'm married, and you just said that you're married. Is that recent or yeah?
I'm actually going to celebrate my fourth wedding anniversary in just a few weeks.
Yay!
Yeah, never thought I'd make it that far with anyone, and so
Wow.
I'm really blessed. And she's open about her mental health too, so there's nothing to hide. We both understand each other and provide each other with support. So yeah, it's a good combo. I could not have been with someone who didn't. I couldn't open up about my mental health and couldn't open
Yeah.
about theirs. It just would not have worked out.
Yeah.
And so yeah, yeah. As you know, marriage is almost like a full-time job,
Yes.
and you
It's
got to keep
hard.
working at it. And there's always a new journey behind, around the river bend. But
Yeah.
so far, so good.
Oh, well, congratulations. That's amazing. I think it just sharing a little bit about that gives people hope, because relationships are hard, right? And I know online sometimes they look like they're really easy and awesome and nice in pictures, but it is hard, but it's also possible, right? And like you said, you found someone that can see all parts of you. And that's awesome. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Um, I'm wondering, what was it like for you when the first time you came forward publicly with your story? What organization was that with, or yeah, how did that work?
Yeah, it started with Active Minds,
Mm.
which is a great organization. It was started by this woman named Allison Melman who lost her brother to suicide, and he was in college, and she decided to find a silver lining in that to create a nonprofit that helped college students open up about their mental health and share resources with each other, just like break through that stigma. And it's spread nationwide. Not sure if they're in Canada yet, but they should be.
Yeah,
And
I'll check.
and then they had just started a chapter at my college, and I just jumped at that because I was ready, and I became the president, and I was just horrible that first semester, but I stuck at it. And that part of that was going out to classrooms and talking about the club, but also sharing my own story. And it felt like such a rush because I had that background in theater, so public speaking was just an extension of that. And I was
Yeah.
just going to the nursing department, I was going to the VA and like, hey, I want to share my story. And like
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they'd be like, sure, like how much time do you got? And so then I got involved with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
Mhm.
And then they just started sending me everywhere. I was going to psych wards, I was going to juvenile halls,
Wow.
I was going to high schools, junior highs, I was going to colleges, talking to PsyD students. I was going to talk to healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
You like it was just amazing experiences. I did it over 100 times,
Wow.
and then that led to getting work outside of that, working with an organization called Semicolon Project, and working with
Yes.
working with the Mighty, working with another nonprofit called This Is My Brave that I still work with today, and the American Association of Suicidology. Just all these organizations that didn't really have to take a chance on me, but saw something in me and gave me those opportunities, and I took full advantage of them. And I was like, just I was the guy who would just say yes to everything. Just you want me to drive like 2 hours away to speak for 10 minutes? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I don't know if you're an extrovert or not, but I am, and I understand that rush. I used to public speak about other things. But then when the public speaking part plus being able to like be my authentic self and see how it really affected people. I'm just such a strong believer that yes, we have professionals, so important and so important to listen to what they say, but I just feel like there's not enough stories out there of lived experience, right? Like we know a lot of things, you can, study it, but just lived experience. So I love that you went to all those places. And I'm a teacher of littles, but even so, like talking about mental health in schools is so powerful while people are young, before we get even more baggage, right? I know that people like you that tell stories have really opened things up. I have teenagers and they're like, they all talk about their mental health. My one daughter, like, it's just like, oh yeah, I just tells all her friends, oh, I went to therapy. I would have never done that in high school, right? Because of
Right.
just that added stigma. I'm curious, um, it's actually harder for us to find guests that are male, and I'm curious about if we could talk about just that added stigma, or the stigma that maybe you have faced or what you've seen others face as men, and how we can support the men in our lives to come forward a little bit more. I'm wondering if you had anything to say about that.
Yeah, it's great for me because like people are always looking for men to talk about mental health, and it's such a small pool. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's definitely gotten better too.
Awesome.
And there are more ways to talk about it, and there's athletes talking about it, celebrities, and so it's not as stigmatized as it used to be.
Yeah.
There's still a lot more work, and there's still a lot of marginalized community where it's still hard to talk about it because of traditions and cultures and fear of discrimination, very real fears. And so yeah, still a lot of work to go for men, and plenty of other marginalized communities.
Yes.
It's
Really important that yeah, that you brought that up, because it is true. I know I talk a lot about therapy or this or that, or self-care in the form of, not just bubble baths, like actually doing the things that are hard to feel better. And I just want to recognize, like, I'm a middle class white woman, right? And I'm married to someone that has a job and insurance. And I know that sometimes I can imagine some people from marginalized communities listening must be like, oh, great for you, because you have all these access to resources. And so I love that you talked about those different organizations. I know about NAMI, but the other ones in the States, and I'm going to put some, I'll put them in the show notes, because it sounds like the one at the school and other ones are accessible to everyone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are all nationwide organizations.
Awesome.
And this is my brave. They've done some international stuff. Like obviously, with the pandemic, it's been a blessing and a curse because they haven't been able to travel as much. But then they've been able to do these virtual shows where
Yeah.
anyone in the world um, can come share their story. There's different themes, whether it be college athletes, which is our next one on September
Right.
25th, to veterans, to people from different marginalized communities, which is awesome, to teens. Yeah, so something for everyone. There's always resources. There's always ways to get involved,
Yeah.
and like mental health care may look like different things. Like so, some people they feel like they can only open up to say like their friends or even their
Yeah.
barber or their coach or their pastor, and so it doesn't necessarily like have to go to a therapist and a hospital and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
It can just start with people in your community, your teacher,
Yeah.
all kinds of other like people that you can reach out to. Like I know in Latin cultures, like women, like they'll convene in laundromats or the salon,
Wow.
and they'll talk about their experiences and their feelings there. Obviously, they don't call it group therapy,
Yeah.
but it achieves the same goal.
Yeah, yeah, that's powerful. It's so true. Just there's so much power in telling your story to just one person. I mean, I can see we have similar-ish personalities that not everyone's going to stand up on a stage, and that doesn't mean that you're not advocating for yourself. I think an advocate just telling one person your story is powerful and brave for both the person telling and also the person listening. So yeah, I just find your people, right? And sometimes it won't happen the first time. It's awkward and it might not, but there are people out there. So I really encourage encourage people to find their people. You brought up the pandemic, and I'm curious because I know I had some interesting reactions. I'm wondering, how did that go for you? How did you respond? Was it triggering, or did you feel like I've been through lots. I got this. Yeah, just I'd love to hear just a little bit about your experiencing what it's been like over the years of COVID.
Yeah, it actually took a while to really hit me,
Mm,
and because at first I was like, this like probably lasts like a couple months, and we'll just hunker down for a while. I'll work on some projects that I've been meaning to get to,
yeah,
but like after a while, it's like, oh my god, this thing is never going to end.
yeah,
And one of the things that helped is I actually moved out of California to Colorado,
yeah,
and completely new setting where like I didn't really know anyone, and so
yeah.
I didn't feel like I was like missing out on a lot. And
Interesting. Yeah.
it's a nice change of scenery, like living with snow and living near mountains, and everything's like all the parks are bigger, dog parks especially, and
Oh,
I miss parts of that, but I'm glad to be back in Los Angeles and being
yeah.
back around my people who I wasn't able to really interact with during the beginning and the heights of COVID. And so I feel like I'm starting to open up more and getting out there,
Mhm.
but it was definitely a strain on because I was so used to going out, going to conferences, going to events, and just going to places like I knowing that I'm going to see people there that I know and
Yeah.
interact with, and people that I only get to talk to online. I miss
Yeah.
traveling. I miss going to speak at different places across the country.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was hard on me because I felt like I was losing my worth to people because I'm just stuck at home every day. And thankfully,
Mhm.
doing the live streaming was also good for me because I was able to really to devote a lot of resources to that and to work on all kinds of different projects that would have been more difficult, and everyone's so used to being on camera now with Zoom and everything, and
Yeah.
so like it's easier to interview people too, as you probably know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not as much as like, oh my god, like what is Zoom, like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do I have a webcam on my laptop? I don't know, like how does
I
this
can't
thing
hear
work?
you. I can't hear you. Oh yeah, I can. You just
Yeah,
start.
yeah, and so that's been helpful. But yeah, definitely strain on relationships, definitely a strain on self-worth, and
Yeah.
just trying to trying to start again, really. And
Yeah.
I'm just still like trying to find my way in the world where like I felt so comfortable in my skin, like I was
Yeah.
going to be the best public speaker of all time. And so now it's been a lot of adjustments, and right now like I'm still, yeah, still trying to figure it out, but like I still like talking about mental health. I can talk about bipolar and
Hmm.
depression and suicide like for nonstop. It's
Yeah.
definitely one of my passions still, but I'm also trying to find a life outside of that so it's not consuming me.
Yeah, yeah, that's powerful. I felt similarly, like my coping mechanisms, like I felt like a lot were taken away, right? But then I also felt like I'm a catastrophic thinker. Like I didn't freak out in the same way that my neurotypical or people that don't struggle with mental health. I was like, oh yeah, of course there could be this catastrophic thing, but it was still yeah, still really hard. But I love that you're looking for different ways. In fact, Julie and I started the podcast like the month that everything shut down because we had all this hypomanic energy, and we were like, we have to do a project or we're gonna not do well. So it good things came out of it, but yeah, really
Yeah,
really
I mean,
hard.
can we take a minute to just talk about how awesome Julie is?
Yes,
I
yes
have
we
her I
can.
have both her books. I have Till the World back here, and I have got
Yeah,
the her memoir on the other
yeah,
side.
I can
So
see it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, she's amazing. She's one of my biggest champions, and I think the world of her. And
yeah,
now she's living in the States. Just
yeah,
she's a hop, skip, and a jump almost. It's
that's
I
awesome.
can't wait to finally meet her in person someday because
Yeah,
I look up to her because she is just constantly working on things and constantly excelling, and she just she just radiates positivity, and we need more people like that. A lot
yeah,
of anger in the world, and justifiably so, but
yeah,
we need that positive energy too, and
yeah.
people like Julie are much needed in the world.
Yes, yes, and she's a real deal. I mean, I've worked with her for a couple of years now, and I love that you said that she's really positive, but she's not toxically positive. Do
No.
you know what I mean? And we really balanced each other out because I tend to look at all the hard things and forget to focus on the other things. But then I also brought her back to like, okay, but admit that it's also hard, you know. So we worked really well together. And I don't know if you know, she's actually stepped back just recently from the podcast because she is going to write another children's book. So there's that to look forward to. I'm really really excited for her.
We'll have to make some shelf space back here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I know as a teacher, I'm like making it, and I'm a substitute. So I'm making it like my goal to I bring it in my TOC kit, teacher on call kit, and I try and get all the librarians to get it because it's a really powerful, beautiful book. So that's a plug. If nobody has it, go get it. um, just two more things I'd love to talk about. I'm not sure when this is airing, but right now we are in Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And I just would like to talk a little bit about, I know you talk about it a lot, um, sharing and such. I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to talk about your experience and what you think people are looking for. What can help? How do I start the conversation? Because I found it really powerful. I think I like shoved a bunch of things down. I was like, oh no, never considered it. No. And then the more I'm reading, I read the term recently, passive suicidal ideation, and I was like, oh, because I always knew that I would get to hypomania. So I just wanted to go to sleep for a really long time. So I thought that didn't have anything to do with suicidal thoughts or anything. But I realize now that wanting to disappear for a while is actual ideation. And I'm reading a lot about how it's much more common than we think because people think of it as one way. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that everyone at some point in their life has considered suicide.
Mm,
Not everyone obviously strongly considers it, but at least thought about it, like,
Mhm.
what if?
Yeah.
And we need to normalize talking about suicide because that's going to save lives. So many people they bottle things up and don't think they have any worth and end up taking their lives like just without even telling anyone, and that's a tragedy, and that can be prevented. I don't think all suicides can be prevented, but there's so many that can be prevented because it's if someone had just opened up, if someone had
Yeah.
recognized the signs and offered help, offered
Yeah.
assistance, instead of passing judgment or just wanting to call the police, really sitting there with the person and
Yeah.
trying to hear their perspective and hear their story. People need a platform. I tried to do that. Like what I'm best at is providing platforms. It's not just about me
Mhm.
getting on camera and
Yeah.
just it's about providing platforms for others, especially people who can't normally talk about these things,
Mhm.
because the more that we can empower people, like the better off we'll all be.
Yes.
And when people are able to talk about these things freely, then it just opens up a new life of possibilities for them, because they now they don't feel alone. They don't feel ostracized, that nobody wants to hear their story, that they have no worth to the world. Because I've been there. Like I felt like nobody cares about me. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to hear my story and all this other stuff. And it's not necessarily about your personal story. Like it's about empowering everyone to just talk about these things and
Yeah.
not to feel like they're the only one. And the more people can open about their suicidal experiences and thoughts or
Yeah.
attempts or their loss to others, the more that we can all open up, and
Yeah.
we can foster a culture where this isn't a taboo subject. It should not
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think I'm not sure why, but I think that sometimes we think, oh, if we talk about it, it's going to make it worse. But it's actually the exact opposite, right? And I know that it for a lot of neurotypical people or people that don't struggle with mental health, it seems scary and things like that, but it takes away the scariness and the power of suicidal ideation to talk about it. So I tell people, don't be afraid to flat out ask, right? Don't be, are you feeling this? Right? Don't be afraid to flat out ask. It's better than not asking at all. And I think you're right. It's going to open up so that we can all talk about it and save lives. And that's just so important. So thank you for speaking about that. I know that even being in as a mental health advocate and being in that realm of talking about things, I know that I've learned from you and other people, and it's given me permission to actually kind of dig back and think about relate and deal with my own things that I shoved away and not realized was suicidal ideation. So I thank you so much for that. Well, one of the two last questions I have for you. One, I'd love to hear of a couple either strategies or practices or things that you do that help you stay healthy. And then I'm wondering what you would say today to someone that's listening and struggling and feeling no hope. So maybe I'll repeat it as two, the strategies or practices, and then maybe just a message for people that are listening right now that are struggling.
Yeah, and for me, like I love getting outdoors. I love
Mhm.
hiking. I love going for long walks or even just going to drives. Thankfully, I live near the ocean. I love water. I love looking at it. That alone helps me. I like being around my dog too. That helps. I like just going out, just taking myself out for a date, even going out to
Love it.
lunch, or yeah, I mean that's awesome, right?
Mhm.
And I love just interacting with people, and but sometimes like I'm not really an extrovert. I consider myself more of an introvert because I can only be around
Oh,
people for so long before I just get exhausted.
yeah.
But when I am in extrovert mode, I love being around people. I love going on, like going to have coffee with friends and all that stuff, or going out for karaoke. That's fun too.
Awesome. I love it. I have to ask because I'm a dog lady, and my little poodle Max, I feel like is my best therapist. What's your dog's name and what kind of dog is it?
Oh, her name is Anna May. She right here. I mean,
Anna May is hanging out.
yeah,
Hi. Oh, a big one.
she didn't know she was going to be on camera.
Thank you, Anna May. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It's such a difference. I didn't know that I could be a fur parent, and it taking care of something else I find really powerful. So thank you for introducing me. And before we go, I would just love to hear, what would you say to someone that's struggling right now? What words of encouragement would you have?
Well, that it's okay to struggle, and we talk about recovery a lot and like
Mm,
finding our purpose and everything, but it's okay to have setbacks. It's an ongoing process.
yes.
We all like have those crashes every now and then, and it's it's definitely it's hard. This
Mm,
whole mental health journey, it is not easy. It's
yeah.
messy. We have our setbacks. We have our ugly moments, stuff that we end up regretting later. But
Mm,
we need to keep pushing forward, keep
yeah.
finding our community, whether it be online, in person, at school, in church, in sports. We have we have the possibility. There's
Mm,
possibilities out there to open up. Everyone's just looking for the platform, looking for the right people, and you can
yeah.
be that for someone. So
Yeah.
go out into the world, volunteer, like find people, like join
Mm,
online support groups, what have you, like listen to podcasts like this. There's
mm,
so many ways to get involved, to talk about your story, and just know that your story doesn't have to sound like everyone else's.
yes.
That you can have everyone has a unique story in some way, so don't feel like you have to fit a certain mold or a certain narrative.
I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all the work you do. I hope you know that you just being who you are and what you're putting out into the world is saving lives. And I so appreciate you, and I loved our time together, and I know our community will as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Well, this is bipolar. Thanks again for tuning in. You can find video versions of This is Bipolar on our YouTube channel. We also have all our previous and soon to be future episodes of the podcast on Apple, Podbean, Spotify, and Google Play. We spend most of our time on Instagram at this.is.bipolar. There is a vibrant community there where we have conversations and post different ideas and different strategies, and we'd just love for you to join us there. It is so helpful if you enjoy our work or think it would be helpful to someone if you could like and share and save and follow us in all or any of those spaces. If you're a listener for the podcast, if you could leave a review, we would be forever grateful. Again, thank you for being here with us. Let's get the word out. Let's share lived experiences so that we can change the ideas that people have about bipolar and help those of us that live with it feel less alone. This is bipolar.